And the first item of business is 1.1. Is there any items on today's agenda that give rise to conflict or pecuniary interest? Councillor Simpson,
I'll recuse myself. I can't remember. 12 point, I don't have the agenda.
12.4.
12.44.
All right,
you.
noted. Thank you. And then we have the agenda. Is there any additions or deletions or amendments to the agenda? If not, I consider a motion to adopt the agenda as presented. Councillor Lloyd, all in favor? Okay, that's carried unanimously. Then we have 3.1, regular council meeting minutes of February 10th, 2020. Any errors, omissions, deletions, corrections? Councillor Chapman?
Thank you, Worship. On public hearing minutes on the rezoning bylaw, just a spelling correction to be made. So T boss, I think, is one S. You might want to just change that one. And I'll move for adoption as amended.
Okay. Any other discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor? All right. And then we have item 4.1, scope of work clarification, arena upgrades. What about that? We got a full meal deal tonight.
I bring friends.
Okay, so welcome staff, whoever wants to lead off. Looks like Terry's eager to dive right in.
Mayor, Council, this item was brought back due to our request for $50,000 for the upgrade to dressing rooms 2 and 3 at the arena. That unfortunately we missed out of the budget at the time. So what we would like to do is upgrade the showers, the floor, some of the plumbing and the electrical lighting in the showers to make them usable for the user groups we have there. And then Cindy will get into.
So I guess basically we'd just like to provide some clarity. So within the staff report itself, I kind of explained what had happened, but basically with the scope, the original scope, the pricing came back in almost, well, more than double what we had intended. So we had to go back a number of times and just start eliminating parts of this, well, making the scope smaller on that. And then just in consultation originally with user groups, a couple of the main things were the relocation of the referee room plus the 2 hydration stations. So once we started, working on those, that started the work under the bleachers, adding an additional shower and washroom for the refs. We needed to remove, we had storage under there for community services. We had to remove that, relocate figure skating. We installed some matting in the figure skating room. So there were a number of things involved with that, and unfortunately it just didn't leave enough to tackle the 4 dressing rooms on the north side of the building. So if you any questions or comments, we're here basically to dig a little deeper if you'd like.
Officer would like to add to the presentation?
Yeah, thank you very much, Cindy, Terry, for that background. And looking and speaking with the ICE users, the cost did come in over what we had anticipated, so they were consulted on how best to prioritize the upgrades that were there. And at that time, the need to have those dressing rooms on the north weren't as important then as it is today. The reason it's more important today is just given the growing reality of youth sport in Coaldale, which is, again, put this back on the horizon. By relocating the ref room underneath the stands, for instance, they moved out of one of the dressing rooms to the north so that a user group could move into that ref room on the north, and that was one of the best dressing rooms. So that's why it was given to the refs so that they could shower. So just to give a little bit of background that way, this is something that staff had run by me, and in trying to get the project done, I authorized the triage of the funds for the upgrades at the arena. So It took a little while to retrace some of the background on that, but this was something that was brought to my attention at the time, and we did proceed with the budget we had, with the priorities we could afford at the time.
Thank you.
Worship. So more of a comment than a question. So with the scope being changed, it would have been nice to have known this 3 years ago, because when it was brought back to us after budget, Councillor Holm was very clear that, we thought this upgrades was already done. So when we're getting asked, we're not looking like, and I realize that it's operational, but when a scope of an approval on something is being changed, or the scope that is being changed, just a quick briefing so we know what's happening. So when it comes back, we're not going back in our minutes looking and bringing back that we've already approved this, how come we're asking for it again? So it would just be nice as the elected official to know when this stuff is happening. And like I say, I'm not blaming anybody, and I understand when, money doesn't go as far as we want it to, but just so we know next time that, the scope has been changed.
Councillor Chapman.
Thank you, Worship. So with the scope changing, are we still dealing with the 4 dressing rooms that we were initially budgeted for, approved? I made that motion 1 or 2 years ago, so that was already set in stone. So has it changed much from then?
Well, 2 of the dressing rooms now, 2 of the 4 on the north are taken by user groups. So it's just the dressing rooms 2 and 3 on the north that are available for user groups on an ongoing basis in public skate. Those are the 2 that this request would address.
And that was the request made at a most recent council meeting, right? It came to light that work hadn't been done, and you requested a consideration be made to bring it back into the budget scope, right?
Correct.
And the only issue remaining is that we didn't allocate the money in the budget most recently, so we'd have to reapprove it if that's our direction, and ask administration to find the money in the budget, or we didn't earmark where the dollars were coming from, did we, or do we have?
No, we didn't. It would have to come from a reserve, of arena or facility of reserve.
Does our CFO have an idea if there's
Yeah, it would come from a facility reserve.
facility reason?
So if council goes ahead and approve this, they just have to amend, include the motion to pay this from a facility reserve, that will amend the budget to fund this.
Thank you. Any other questions of council? Councillor Simpson?
Thank you, your worship. I was just gonna go forward and make a motion to approve this. And kind of how Kyle put it. If you could quote that again.
Dreading that the funds come from the facility reserve. Okay. So we have a motion by Councillor Simpson to approve the request with the funds to come from the facility reserve as described by our CFO. Is there any discussion to the motion? Okay, seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor? Okay, that's carried.
I just had one.
Yep.
I would just like to echo Councillor Avery's comments. You're 100% correct. That should have been an information update that was provided to council at the time, and I just wanted to come out of the gates and say that so that council recognized where the decision-making process went, and it wasn't staff giving the authorization, it was myself. And one of the problems with getting overextended is that updates like that don't make it to the council level as much as it should, and that's something that we've tried to emphasize on procedural amendments internally to ensure that things like that don't occur in the future. So I appreciate your comments and I agree with them.
Good. All right. And then we have item 7.1, Coaldale Family Fun Run. And It's in our package. And Cindy, were you gonna speak to that as well? Or Spencer, who? You guys are all rushing to the mic, so it's a blur. Go ahead, whoever wants to address this.
I can do this.
Okay.
I gotta get some of the fun staff reports every once in a while. So as some of you may know, through either council meetings or actually running the race routes, we have historically participated in the Coldell Family Fun Run. Some of us taking it more seriously than others, but that's good. What they're asking to do is a sponsorship from the town, as they have in the years past. We've done sponsorships, and we've also entered in corporate teams into the competition realm. We almost won one year. We medaled another year. So there's a cost for sponsorship, and then there's also a cost for covering the registration fees of the town of Coldell team, including council, kind of build that community spirit. So is this something that council would like to approve, similar as they've approved in years past?
First off, even though the representatives aren't here, I'd like to commend the originators of the fun run. It's who would have thought it 10 years ago by, and every year the participation is getting better and better and stronger, and with a little up 8th Street, it'll be rejuvenated. I won't twist an ankle this year, but
It won't be a Spartan race this year, but yeah.
yeah. So, but I believe we have that in our community events budget anyway. So I think it's just
$1,000
$1,000. So,
plus the cost of registration for the big group competition.
hey, Councillor Chapman.
Yeah, thank you, Worship. And I spoke with Melanie Hartorn, who is one of the organizers for the fun run, and I think she indicated very strongly with me that the funds that would be generated would be going to public events here in Coldell. So I was quite comforted by that, being that the proceeds from the improvements would go to the grounds adjacent to the Pinnacle Park. And then in addition, $2 from every entry would go to the Lethbridge Corridor Family Services Unit, which is also based in Coldale. So I think that those kinds of pledges are really important for our community. So I'm pleased with that. I would make a motion to go with the Platinum sponsorship, and that the town also sponsor
Cover the entry fees as
the entry fees as
previous years. Okay. We have Councillor Chapman's motion. Any discussion? Okay, seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor? Okay, that's carried. Okay, and then we have 8-1, so that's awards, upcoming awards banquet. And Cindy's going to provide an update on that.
So I'm really happy to report that we've had, all 6 of our categories have had nominations in them, so it's pretty exciting. One of them, we do have 2 nominations actually. So for first year, I thought that was pretty good. So basically, I just wanted to ask council how they would like to proceed this year and going forward on how to decide who the winners are in those categories. And then the second part of that would be part of the sponsorship. We do have 4 tickets to the banquet as well. So I was just wanting to ask council if they'd like to purchase additional tickets for the banquet as well. So a couple of options. We could bring the nominations to council and you could decide on the winners based on the nominations. Or if you prefer, we could appoint a committee basically from administration to decide on the winners of the categories. So
I think that maybe, like, preferably in years going forward, it might be good at the same time to strike, maybe, ask for a arm's length citizen committee in future years, but being that the time is drawing nigh for this event, you know, I guess I might lean toward maybe bringing the nominees forward to our next council meeting and you know, the council doing that, because it doesn't seem proper to make staff do something like that.
Absolutely.
But, you know, that's just my thought, but I'm open to councilors' suggestions if they have any as well. So, Councilor Lloyd?
Thank you, Your Worship. I think 2 weeks is too long to wait because the awards night is on the 21st. I think the winners would like to know so they can make plans to be there. The nominations closed already in end of January, so I think some of them are already, you know, wondering whether they're going to get the nomination or not. So I think we should do something before 2 weeks from now. That's my thought.
Any suggestion on how
Should we just have a quick look at it after the meeting today?
I've got them with me.
Well, we
think-
can
I think we
maybe
have.
consider them in camera today then. Okay, if you have everything ready. Okay,
Perfect.
okay, get her done.
Great, thank you
Okay.
very much.
Just a quick question, Your Worship, through to Cindy, if I may, just some of the logistics that you're speaking to here. Initially in here, you had five of the categories, so now we have 6 categories covered?
Yes.
So the 12-60 tickets to the event, that's for the two per category?
That's correct.
Okay,
Yeah.
that wasn't
That was
outlined.
the initial thought, yes.
Okay, that wasn't outlined in here.
Yeah, I apologize, I just noticed that, I should have had that addressed.
And what's your thoughts on the 4 additional tickets? Could you describe that?
I was
for
just
us?
thinking a table of 8, that's the only thing, I was just wanting to know if council, we would like to ask the mayor to do the presenting, so obviously Mayor and Mrs. Craig hopefully would be able to attend, but then we were just curious if there would be other council members that would like to maybe fill a table, so
So-
that's the thought process, so.
Well, maybe we can talk about that as the evening goes on
Yeah.
and then come up with the number of tickets for council as well then.
Absolutely.
Okay, great. Well, thanks for the
Thank you
report.
very much.
And 8.2, minor hockey, request for ice users. And so I think that we have Spencer here to open that topic up for us.
Yes, thank you, Mayor, and good evening to you and council. The report is fairly brief because the request was fairly straightforward. So what's happened is after a discussion with administration, Kildare Minor Hockey has brought forward an expression of interest to start a arena enhancement steering committee or working group or whatever you'd like to call it. This is exciting to know that the group, and I should say groups because this certainly the letter came from minor hockey, but it certainly isn't something that has only been discussed with minor hockey. This is something that's been kind of mulled around and thrown around as an idea to move the enhancement of the arena forward in a meaningful way with various groups over the years. So it's exciting to know that we're now at a point where we've received a request from one of those groups. It certainly doesn't mean that there would be a lead group or one group that takes precedent over any other, but it does mean that we can work to formalize the discussion with all of the groups that would like to be a part of this. So with that, I have listed a number of the ice users in the report, and of course, if there are any that have been missed, we would be happy to include them as well. What I would suggest as next steps is that we would obviously like to notify all user groups that this, if council chooses to approve the next steps, that this group will be formed, identify a number of suitable dates to have a first meeting, and then I have listed as one of the potential groups just community members at large that are passionate about skating, folks who might show up often for the public skate, things like that. So for that particular stakeholder group that would be represented in this committee or this working group, we'd like to advertise for a few spots, likely 2 spots for communities members at large. So my recommendation to council would be to please approve the request so that we can start the good energy behind the group and get the discussion going.
Well, thank you, Spencer. And with this, would you envision that in the early stages, this user group would cobble together some kind of terms of reference and guideposts on how the group would operate and how it would move the discussion forward?
Certainly. I should have clarified that in the report, but that is definitely something that I've typically undertaken as a first step when forming a group like this, is having them guide how the terms of reference is going to work so that we know what their goals and objectives are as we move forward.
Do we have questions from other members of council? Councillor Chapman?
Thank you, Worship. Just one quick question through to Spencer, and thanks for putting this all together. I'm sure that you've spoken already with some of these groups who've already indicated, or that you have listed here, I should say, but have you sort of kind of had a conversation with any of them about this process?
Through the chair to Councillor Chapman, excellent question. To be honest, the discussion around a group like this has been going on for quite some time, so minor hockey just happened to be the group that made the request. We've received that request from minor hockey, but it certainly isn't indicative that they're the only ones that have been a part of that discussion. As per the request, we have brought this forward, having met most recently with minor hockey only, but this, as far as I remember, is reflective of a number of different discussions that have been had over recent years with the other groups.
Well, thank you, and I think that that's certainly the olive branch I'd like to see, as I got a call from one of the groups today that were a little surprised by this, so they wanted to get a better perception of what's going on.
And our CAO?
Just to chat on Spencer's comments as well. I've met and spoke with the Copperheads about this topic, you know, off and on for the past couple of years, and this is of course something that they're very excited in participating in. And as you know, Spencer mentioned, this is not just coming in a vacuum or in isolation from one user group. They happen to put pen to paper. After having a meeting with them, I had asked that they'd formalize their thoughts in a letter to council, because this was something that's been discussed with council at the past couple of strategic planning retreats. It's reflected in the 2019 to 2021 capital budget, where there's a second sheet of ice acknowledgement with the desire to form a business plan involving a public-private partnership of sorts. So the breadcrumb trail of this concept is over the course of the past number of years, and there's been a lot of exciting brainstorming discussions, some informal over coffee, some a little bit more formal, and then now there's a letter. But I would say that the intent all along, and even minor hockey in the most recent meeting, had said fully that they intended for all of the user groups to be invited. They just happened to put pen to paper, and that's why in the list here there is Coaldale Copperheads being included here, and then in the letter from Coaldale Minor Hockey, other arena user groups. I think the intent is for them to be collaborative, and I'm the one that requested them to take their excitement at this time in a letter so I could brief council, and the timing I thought was quite excellent because of what was discussed at strat planning. So just to kind of like round the whole loop, I don't think the intent here was for anyone to beat anyone to the punch. It's just, you know, here's one of many local groups that are quite excited to roll their sleeves up. The Sport Rec Working Group, for example, has been going really well. It would be keeping the momentum going, except more in the context with ICE users, and to see where can we actually achieve goal using public-private model of some kind. So just to kind of close the loop on the whole discussion there.
I was just kind of curious. This is sort of, you know, administration has its hands on this a little bit, and I just want to know, make sure that we're not straining capacity of our resources by adding, you know, yet another kind of function or duty to the people. So do we have the capacity to lead a group such as this in a meaningful way right now, or, you know, what's the thought on that? Because we got quite a few little things on the go, so I just don't want to co-sponsor a nervous breakdown of anybody. Maybe would it be appropriate for maybe the direct administration to come back with a recommendation on this a little more formalized and speak to the capacity issue of administration on how they guide it forward?
That certainly is one option. I would say that because of the seasonal nature of the facility, during the season, it would be less likely, as far as I understand, that everybody would have the time to commit to real discussion on the matter. So because it's in the off-season, that's one less thing that we as staff are focused on when the facility isn't in full use as a ice facility. So that frees up some time for us to look at other issues and areas of focus. I'm comfortable saying that myself and my staff have the capacity to have that discussion once the ice season has ended and we have spring and summer to meet with the ice users as a group.
Yeah, I concur, and I was just going to add to what Spencer said. We're already having sort of informal coffees and meetings on this topic. I just wanted to check in with council. I think I know what I heard at strat planning. There's what's in the capital budget. There's motivation at the grassroots level. Would it be worth our time to put together a draft terms of reference for council to take the next step? Because if there's not interest to formalize this process, then we won't, waste our time putting together terms of reference. So it's more of, are you interested in this concept? I think we do have the capacity. At this stage, it would be more meetings, brainstorming. At some point, I could see a checkpoint coming before council, a request for expression of interest to see, are there actually any types of private partnerships that are interested perhaps in something like this? So there's going to be a few different stage gating junctures along this journey. The first is going to start with getting a terms of reference approved by council, then getting people on the committee, and it'll likely be a lot of the same people at the multi-user group meeting, brainstorm. We've got a lot of good technical in-house expertise that can look at some of the logistics from an infrastructure perspective, and as well as operational. And then down the road, if that's going well, a request for expression of interest so that we can properly turn different tires over and see what's out there for interest. And then that's where I will come back to you on, okay, if this is getting big, this is going really well, we might be out of capacity. But I think we can get through a few of these stages with the capacity that we have.
Well, that's good. Councillor Simpson?
Thank you, Your Worship. I think this is a great thing. I think it's great that community groups want to get working hard on things that are in Coldell, and I think we can't be shy to that. I think we got to welcome them with open arms and go, thank you. So with that, I'm gonna make a motion to accept the Coldell Minor Hockey Association letter for information and approve administration's recommendations as presented.
Okay, that's good. And then I would hope that with that thank you letter to minor hockey for taking an initiative to reach out to us would be in order as well. Any discussion? I think this is good, and it's already been said, but I really look forward to having this group struck, and hopefully it'll attract different people to the discussion in that, and get a different perspective. People that are associated with the ice users definitely, but people that are passionate about the ice users, and bring some new faces on board to add some of their thoughts to the process and possibilities. So if there's no other questions, I'll call the question on Councillor Simpson's motion. All in favor? Okay.
Motion to direct the administration to work with terms of reference. With this.
Sure. Councillor Chapman moves that direct the administration to come forward with a terms of reference at some future date. Any discussion? All in favor? Okay, that's carried. And then we have, I think that gets that, and then we have the information items. So we have 11.1. You want to speak to that, Spencer? Or?
Certainly, if I may, Mr. Mayor. I'll keep it brief. A lot of the information is obviously already in the report, so I don't have a lot to add verbally other than to say that the public participation plan that was approved in July of last year has really led to a number of excellent outcomes based on the three-part process that was used for this particular project. The point that we're at now is we have a good understanding of what some of the, I don't know if you'd call them higher ticket, but some of the optional items and activities that could go in the facility are prioritized as from the community's perspective, which was by and large the reason for the online survey over the Christmas season. And as a result of the work that has been done on the public engagement side for this particular project, the next steps that I've noted in the report are what I would bring to council for consideration. Number one being Sport and Rec Working Group and Council Roundtable Workshop. The working group's been integral to having good holistic discussion about what this facility represents and how it can be programmed to meet the needs of the community now and into the future. And it would be a good thing to be able to have a good open discussion from their perspectives and your perspectives as to how this can be refined even more. Additionally, I believe it would be helpful to develop a frequently asked questions section for this particular project, as I know there are still a few lingering questions about certain aspects of it. And of course, after the preliminary design is eventually hammered out, we would move on to the next phase of the project, which would be the architects getting into the detailed design of the facility with a goal to either construct late fall or next year. And with that, I'll field any questions that council may have.
You're suggesting in point one that such a roundtable will happen later in February, and would that, I guess that would be tentative and more likely earlier in March.
Yes, that's a good catch, Mayor. What had happened was this report was prepared in a couple of weeks in advance, and the last agenda was quite full, so the item was deferred. Therefore, you're exactly right. Both of those statements should read sometime in March.
Okay, good. Yeah. Just broke into a little bit of a nervous sweat there for a minute.
Just want to make sure you're reading along, right? That's all.
Okay. So unless there's any questions through the Spencer on his well-worded update, I entertain a motion to receive for information, and that would entail adopting your recommendations there. So. Councillor Lloyd. Okay, Councillor Lloyd moves. All in favor? Okay. And then we have the Baroness Eureka minutes, item 11.2. Anybody care to, either Councillor Chapman moves those for information. All in favor? Yeah, that's
Just as a quick addendum to the minutes, the FCSS Board, Eureka Warner Board passed an interim budget for the coming years, so their forecast for requisitions to municipalities will be kept at the same level as last year. So there'll be a 0% increase.
good. Thanks for that update. And then I would entertain a motion to go into closed meeting. Councillor Pauls, all in favor? Okay, that's carried.